Waxler, and it's an honor to address this very prestigious group, and it's an honor to follow these two. I don't want to even compete with Kathy Bigg's footsteps. I've been a fan of yours for a long time. So again, without further ado, it's an honor to be part of this. So I think we have another question. Have you, your ACC chapter or practice, approached state officials about our prior authorization problem? So we'll take a couple seconds. Well, we have some good music too. My 22-year-old would enjoy this. All right, so that's part of the issue right there. So we've got to get everybody engaged. So I was asked by Henry McCants and folks on the stage here to sort of give a perspective of what's happening in Pennsylvania. So I came up with this clever topic, PA and PA, the long road to reform, and it is indeed a long road, unfortunately. So I don't need to tell anybody in this audience what this is, right? This is what we do for a living. And I also don't need to tell anybody in the audience that we want to take care of the problem before it gets to this. This was a person in our cath lab about 15 years ago, and I said, oh my God, I got to make a slide of this. I've used this in probably 1,000 talks in 15 years. So I rarely give a talk without finding a way to get, this is my favorite slide of all time. So my wife was kind enough to find some clever cartoons. So here we are, you know, my group is sort of a hybrid. We're technically private practice, but we do a lot of teaching, but you know, we really literally roll up our sleeves and are on the front line. So, you know, we're trying to save people's lives, and we have to get permission to save their life. So, you know, this is how it feels. You know, you have to jump over all these hurdles to get your patients what they need, and then this is all of us at the end of the day, you know, after we waste our time. You know, our time is limited. We all have families. We all want to get home. But just our time that we spend in the office is limited. We have other patients that need to be seen, and this is just a dreadful waste of time. Now, is this important? It is important. The American Medical Association did a survey, and the average in the bottom right is people responded that it took between each individual PCP and his or her staff an average of 16 hours a week. Now, I don't know where they came up with this number, but the point is it's obviously a big deal. It has gained some traction in the national press. This is an op-ed from the New York Times in 2014, and this is an article I found literally a week or two ago on, I think it was CBS.com, where interestingly, this is self-reported by patients, but 1/3 of patients who were rejected by their RBM for a test said that their condition deteriorated. Obviously, they're biased. So I don't know what that means, but you know, I was told a long time ago, perception is reality. And according to this article, which is about 10 days old, 1/3 of patients believe that when their test gets rejected in the near future, they have a deterioration of their health care, and they may be correct. So what does it mean in Pennsylvania? I apologize, I spent hours trying to crisp up this slide. I even got our IT guy, and this is the best I could do. So I'm sorry if it's blurry. But if you look at the bottom, this is the front page of a big newspaper in Delaware, the state, our eastern neighbor. I'm a Pennsylvanian. And it says, denial of test almost fatal. This is a guy named Michael Fields. Most people in this room have heard of Michael Fields, and some of you may know the case. But let's take a minute to look at the details of the case. It's actually going to make you nauseous. So Michael Fields was, I think he still is, but at the time was a 45-year-old man, diabetes, hypertension, smoking, family history. For those of us who our frontline cardiologist. I don't really think he has a high likelihood of coronary disease. What do you think? I don't know. It's probably like, 1 in 1,000. No, I mean, obviously this guy will get coronary disease at some point. So he presents to his PCP. I don't have the EKG, but I know that the PCP quoted shortness of breath, CHF, and angina. Those aren't important symptoms, I don't think. So a stress nuclear study was ordered, and again, I don't have the EKG. So somebody might say, what did the EKG show? Who knows? I don't know. So it was immediately rejected by the RBM, which, by the way, as I told Kathy Biga, was Med Solutions, which, funny enough, is which you've already seen is the worst one. So I didn't know that until 20 minutes ago that they're the worst, but they were the bad guys here. So they rejected it. The PCP immediately appealed. They rejected his or her appeal. The PCP did a second appeal. They refused to look at it because they don't do second appeals. So they never looked at it. Apparently they just sort of put it in a file. 2 weeks later, the PCP's office said, what's going on with the appeal? They said, there is no appeal, the case is closed. 2 weeks later, the patient had more angina. They called, they basically said, can you please reopen the case? And the RBM said, no, the case is closed, sorry. The patient called Blue Cross Blue Shield of Delaware and basically begged the woman, please, and his words were quoted, since they record everything, quoted in the newspaper, please, do something. It was like a man asking for help, and they told him to fill out a form over the phone. So somebody decided, I don't know if it was the patient himself or the PCP, that I don't know. Somebody said, just go to the friggin' ER, and he did. So he goes to the ER, gets admitted with unstable angina. The next day, his cath shows tight left main. Now, we could argue that maybe he wouldn't have done well on the treadmill, but that's not the point of today's talk, right? So let's not think about what had happened had he been approved. That's a different topic. So that's not, either way. So the next day he gets an urgent bypass. So the one good thing about this case is it became a national sensation and went public and brought in a lot of scrutiny. So how did we in Pennsylvania get involved? Well, my good friend Mark Tisi, who until a couple years ago was very involved in our state chapter, but his kids are graduating from high school and we got to reel him back in, which we will. So Mark Tisi, who's a clinical assistant professor at Jefferson, he was asked, because I asked him how he got this gig, he said a friend of his who's a non-physician actually is part of a company that reviews medical statistics. So because of his friend, he was asked to be the cardiologist to review data in Delaware. So my friend Mark Tisi was heavily mentioned in this report. And this report came out a few months later. I want to thank Henry McCants for getting me copies of this and the next report I'm going to show you. So what did Mark Tisi find? He found that 12% of the rejected stress nuclear studies over the last few months, I forgot how many months he reviewed, fit the AUC criteria. That's redundant, the AUC. And so this is obviously not good. So what were some of the take-home messages from the Delaware Insurance Commissioner's report? They mandated that Blue Cross Blue Shield must eliminate contingent fees, which basically means that the RBM was getting extra money to reject studies. They said Blue Cross Blue Shield has to get rid of that, of Delaware. They said criteria must not be more restrictive than those of the ACC. They said that if the ACC criteria says it's a good stress nuclear study, they must approve it. They can't do a prior auth and all this stuff. They can't do a peer-to-peer. The reviewers must, quote, have expertise in the field. Obviously, we know they can twist that statement, but the message is clear. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Delaware must be responsible and must monitor and review the rejections of their middleman, their RBM. What they do, as many of you know, the RBM says ask the insurance company says ask the RBM, and basically this was saying that the insurance company is responsible for the RBM's decisions. And so this actually went higher. Not only was this a report in Delaware, but this went up to the federal government. And so let me just show you a couple interesting quotes that came out of Washington, D.C. So Washington, D.C. came into Delaware and basically investigated Delaware. A couple interesting quotes I found. I read the report. And here's the quote, one quote, and I'll read it. And this is a quote from an insurance executive. Quote, while some of the savings were achieved through denying test requests, more were achieved through the so-called sentinel effect, the reduced number of tests that doctors request when they realize their tests will be reviewed by a third party. There it is. I mean, we've all assumed that they're trying to change our behavior. I mean, it's there in black and white in a federal report, so they're guilty as charged. And another thing that was very interesting is that, again, these RBMs were incentivized. They made more money by rejecting tests. And that actually violated the Delaware state law. I didn't know that. I actually have to confess, I don't know if there's a Pennsylvania state law to this. I'm not sure about that, but wouldn't be surprised if there is. And I don't know if this is happening in Pennsylvania, but I sure suspect that it is. So what happened? This became national news. This is the NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams when he was still the anchor. And so this got us to thinking. It got us to thinking that if Delaware was now going to have to use the AUC, and by the way, as I mentioned, one of the things that came out of this is Delaware was forced to use the AUC. So then we started thinking, if it can happen in Delaware, why can't it happen the next state over, right? I mean, we thought we would basically plagiarize the idea and try to make it happen in Pennsylvania. So I was very fortunate to be part of a prestigious group of guys from Pennsylvania. It was an honor to actually be part of these guys. About a half dozen of us, and I want to show the names there. That's the state capital of Harrisburg. So Mark Tesey, Judd Doherty, who many of you know, who was a mentor of mine for a long time, who was just the governor a couple of years ago from Pennsylvania. Bill Combs, Bill Van Decker, who many of you know, Bill Follensby, who many of you know, and me. I was the lowest ranking guy in that group by far. But we had two heavy hitter guys there. I mean, Van Decker and Follensby are two nationally, if not internationally known nuclear cardiologists. So this group of 6 of us went to the state insurance commissioner and his staff. There were about 5 or 6 of them. And basically what we said to them in a nutshell was, look, there was a big national outcry in the next state over. Why are we waiting? We literally brought a copy of the AUC. We actually handed them, here's a copy of the AUC. We said to them, look, why don't you just mandate that all your insurance people and all your RBMs in Pennsylvania just use the AUC. Just put the information into a computer, we get an answer. And they said, oh, this is self-serving. I said, how is this self-serving? It's going to be streamlined, it's transparent. I even made the point. They said, oh, you doctors just order too many tests. I said, well, here you go. If you find some doctor who 25 or 30% of his or her tests are inappropriate, you've got the data. I mean, you've got the data right there. You got the smoking gun to question that doctor and say, what are you doing? And they used the word self-serving about 4 times to the point where it just, we just left with our tail between our legs. And I literally said to them, are we going to have to pass a law? And one of them said something like, yeah, good luck with that. So what we decided next is that, with all due respect to the ACC, of which I've been a proud member for close to 22, 23 years now, we decided that we're just a little state chapter of cardiologists. We need to broaden it to, as Dr. Van Decker, as Bill Van Decker, this is a Van Decker term, the House of Medicine. So we decided we were going to bring it to the Pennsylvania Medical Society. It was very convenient that I was, and still am, the liaison from the Pennsylvania ACC to the Pennsylvania Medical Society. I'm sort of the go-between. And Bill is on the board of the Pennsylvania Medical Society. So we've double teamed. So he and I basically attacked the Pennsylvania Medical Society and pushed it through. We had to go through the onerous process of making it part of their agenda. And at the bottom, it initially was probably about number 27 on their list. And Bill and I, annoyed them enough to, it's actually their number 1 priority now. So we got a bill finally written and passed, not passed, but introduced in the last session. and it was HB 1657. It was introduced with about 6 months left in the legislative session. For those of you who don't know, I've learned a lot in the last few years. You have to get the bill passed within that session or it dies, and then you start all over. And we knew this would never pass. We didn't think it would pass, and it didn't, but at least it sort of got the word out. This is about 1.5 years ago. So we had the bill ready to go, and we reintroduced it at the beginning of this session, which is now, it's a 2-year session, and I think last time I checked it's September right now, so we still have about 1 year and 4 months. So this is our bill, House Bill 1293. Let me take a couple minutes and give you some of the highlights of what we're asking for in House Bill 1293. The prior auth criteria, and again, this had to be written in such a way to incorporate GYN, neurosurgery, orthopedics, so we had to water it down a little bit. We had to make a strategic decision that we wanted to include more doctors, but we had to sort of dilute the language a little bit. So prior auth criteria must be evidence-based, and if there are AUC, you must use the AUC in that particular field. Obviously, duh, that's easy for us cardiologists. If a request fits the AUC, you must approve it. It must be applied consistently. You can't reject Mrs. Johnson's stress test today and approve it next month, if it's the exact same request. You really should be consistent. The insurers must use an electronic process so things can happen quickly. As has been mentioned already, this is a patient access issue, and we're not, no offense, one of my best friends is a dermatologist. I don't want to insult anybody's brother or cousin who's a dermatologist, but even he admits, I see him back in a week or two, whatever. So he's very laid back, type B, he's kind of like a surfer guy. We cardiologists can't afford to be that way, right? We're all type A individuals for the most part, because this is life or death stuff, so we want to move quickly. They may not force us to do step 1. I'm sure you guys have all had an experience where you had to do a regular tread in somebody with a left bundle or LVH and strain that you knew was a waste of time. I've actually told patients point blank, you're going to be doing 2 treadmill stress tests. You can call your insurance and thank them for that. It's ridiculous. And there must be transparency. I've actually had RBMs tell me they will not tell me the criteria because it's proprietary. How can it be proprietary? How am I supposed to know, what's going on here? So they have to have transparency. There's more. The reviewer has to be a currently practicing physician in the state of Pennsylvania. The prior auth is binding. There can be no retroactive denials. As has already been mentioned earlier, there's nothing worse than hearing this phrase, and I've heard it before, the obtaining of prior authorization does not constitute guarantee of payment. I literally said, why in the hell am I hanging on the phone then? Right? Why are we on the phone getting prior authorization if they finally say yes, and then 2 months later they say, well, we're not going to pay for it? I don't understand what is prior authorization. It's just illogical. The RBM must give a decision within 24 hours again. This is cardiology. We don't have time to waste. The RBM appeal doctor must be an actively practicing and board certified in that area and have no financial gain. So we're asking a lot, but everything we're asking is fair and reasonable. So I'm obviously biased, but I defy anybody to argue with me and say that this is unreasonable. They will. And then again, we're asking for a uniform prior auth form to be developed. So I want to, give a shout out to our neighbors in Ohio. This past a year ago, almost to the day, and in this very session about a year ago, we talked about the success of Ohio. How did Ohio do it? Well, they did it with a lot of hard work, and in no disrespect at all. I'm not saying anything negative about them, but they were fortunate to have Cleveland Clinic and Ohio State. We've tried to plagiarize from them and copy them. The problem that we have in Pennsylvania is our biggest groups, UPMC and Geisinger and a couple others, actually have their own insurance, right? So we go to UPMC and say, look how much we need to get you on board. As Ohio did, they were very smart. They got these 2 big organizations on board, so these big organizations could strong-arm the legislature. Our big organizations are also insurance companies, so they're sort of conflicted and they really don't want to help us. we are trying to go for the Penns and the Temples and those organizations to help us, again, copying Ohio and following in their footsteps, since they were so brilliant in how they got it done. So in the last 5 minutes or so that I have, what are we doing in Pennsylvania? Well, several of us, and you can see Bill Van Decker in the bottom, several of us are trying to go and really work over the legislators, and we've had some success. I had one legislator literally tell me, it seems logical, Dr. Waxler, let me talk to the people in my area, let me look into this. Not 1 week later, I gave him my cell phone and my email. I said, no problem, Representative, take your time. 1 week later, I get this random call on my phone between patients, and I took the call, which is rare. And it was this rep, and he said, hey, Dr. Waxler, it's Representative, and I won't say his name. I'm driving to Harrisburg right now. I am on board. This bill is awesome. I said, well, what happened? He said, my wife was in the doctor's office yesterday, and I'm not making this up, and she needs this medicine or she could die. And the doctor was saying that, this is ridiculous, they won't pay for this medicine. And he said, oh my God. He said, I am literally driving to Harrisburg now. It was like 9:30, so they have a nice job. But anyway, and he said, I am going to talk up your bill. I was like, wow, this is cool. So, literally, this story goes on and on. And here's the funny thing. When the PA Med lobbyists, and again, one of the things we've done is gotten the PA Medical Society really to use their machinery. When I spoke to the woman who's the chief of staff for the Speaker of the House, and our lobbyist basically said, she runs Harrisburg. He told me ahead of time, she basically makes a lot of decisions and kind of guides the Speaker. And so I told her that very story, and within 10 seconds, she said, I know exactly who that rep is. Just when I told her the story, and she nailed it. And I said, I can neither confirm nor deny. I said, these people, they know. Well, that's me. So what are we doing? We had the president of the Pennsylvania Medical Society, not me, thank gosh, send a letter to all the reps explaining what's going on. We're targeting, our bill is in that Pennsylvania House Insurance Committee, so we're obviously targeting them. We're trying to get the bill out of committee. It's hard. You got to get the bill out of committee, then you have to get the bill to pass the House, then you have to do the same thing in the Senate. So it's actually going to be up for a discussion and hopefully a vote sometime in late October, we think. Probably mid-October. So we're hoping we can get it out. We've got it up on the Pennsylvania Medical Society website as well as the Pennsylvania ACC website. Hopefully people actually look at it. It was mentioned a few minutes ago, Minnow Walsh mentioned about social media. It was actually Dr. Walsh's influence that got me to get a Twitter account. I'm 50. My kids are 22, 20, and 18, and I say I don't have time for this social media stuff. But I did start a Twitter account based on Dr. Walsh's advice, and I use it sort of for political, not political, Democrat, Republican stuff. As is already mentioned, we don't have time for that. But for advocacy stuff. And in Pennsylvania, we're doing this thing called a thunderclap. I didn't even know what a thunderclap was. But apparently a thunderclap is where you get a bunch of people to sign up on Twitter and Facebook. I don't do Facebook, but my wife does. And I got her to sign up. And September 26th, the Pennsylvania Medical Society is going to release, hopefully, hundreds of us all at once on Twitter and Facebook. Within 1 minute, it's going to go to hundreds or thousands of Twitter and Facebook accounts, and then hopefully will spread. So we're going to do that September 26th. So myself and Vince and Suresh, the governors, and Bill Van Decker, we're trying to get more people in Pennsylvania to sign up for this. Hey, if you want to sign up outside of Pennsylvania, that's great, but I don't know. It can't hurt. I got my sister in Manhattan to sign up, but what the heck. So we are sending messages on Twitter. You can kind of see there's a guy there. There's a video of some guy in Pittsburgh, and he tells his story. Again, we just have to get people to look. The Pennsylvania Medical Society made these flyers out. We've sent tens of thousands of flyers out across the state. We're trying to get doctors to hand them to patients. And basically the idea is we're trying to get patients to call in and give their cases. The one thing I think we kind of screwed up with this flyer, and I wish I was part of making the flyer, was not. It doesn't actually say call your rep. I think that we should have had that on there. What we're using this flyer for is to have families and patients call into us at PA Med, Pennsylvania Medical Society and give us their case. So just to kind of wrap up here, this is Kathy Bogart. She is the secretary, and I'm part of a 14-person practice. We have about 1.5 or so FTEs. All they do is prior auth and stuff. So this is her sitting in my office, handing me the phone. I was actually doing a prior auth on not the same state rep that I just told you the story, but another state rep, and without violating his HIPAA, the guy was a walking time bomb for coronary disease, and with an abnormal EKG, and of course they rejected his stress nuclear society. I forgot who the RBM was, but it doesn't matter. So this is her handing me the phone after we're waiting. I said, Kathy, stop for 10 seconds, let me take your picture. So the doc was actually on the phone. I said, he can wait 10 seconds, I'm taking your picture. So for those of you in the back, if you can't see, I blew up on the next slide. That's 34 minutes. Now, somebody will say we staged the picture. We did not stage it. I'll take a lie detector test. That's legit. So again, it'd be easy to just stage it, but it's true. So just to summarize, is it really going to take another Michael Fields to get this done in Pennsylvania? We don't have, and I'm sad to say, we don't have a terrible, awful case. We have a bunch of mediocre cases where they should have approved it, they wasted our time. I actually have a suspicion, although my colleagues have told me they're not that smart, don't give them that much credit. I actually have a suspicion that they smartened up enough that the really blatant cases they approve so they don't get bad press. But again, friends of mine in the business have said, yeah, they're not that smart. But so it's so sad that we have to find a 45-year-old who almost died to get any traction in Pennsylvania. So it is slow going. So I found this, I used this slide for a palliative care talk, but so it sort of applies here. You could just change the word comfort to advocate, right? So our main job, we try to cure patients and all that, but our job is to advocate for patients. And as what has been said already 3 or 4 times, this is not as much a doctor issue. Yes, it is. It is a doctor issue because it keeps us there late. We don't get to see our families. We don't get to spend more time with the patient who's waiting next. So it does waste our time. It is a doctor issue, and it is a healthcare dollar issue because we have secretaries, that are being paid to waste time. But it's mostly a patient access issue. And I think if we remember the patient is the main priority and we frame it like that, we have our best chance of success. So with slow going in Pennsylvania, I hope that I can report next year that we were successful. I give it 50-50. But thank you for your time.
Any questions? Dr. Handel. Emily's coming behind you.
First of all, I want to thank the panel. It was an excellent presentation, and many of us have been living this nightmare for a long time. This is not an issue that's crept up in the last year or two, and thank you for shedding the history on it, because it's really important to understand, and it really does impact on all of our patients. And it's not just about a particular modality, it's everywhere, and I'm really glad that you brought this to the forefront. It's 13 years now since the appropriate use criteria started. It's been going on for a long time. We've heard all these nightmare stories. I've had the pleasure of actually being threatened with a lawsuit by one of the executives at Med Solutions, who said that I had vested interest in the Focus product and everything else, and therefore I was conflicted. I mean, the rhetoric here is unbelievable, and the nastiness is there. Just as an aside, the appropriate use criteria were actually born out of a meeting with the medical directors of insurance companies who said, we need guidance to help figure out how to pay for all of these tests. And the ACC actually took that charge and created the first set of appropriate use criteria based on the medical directors from insurance companies. So they're produced, wouldn't you think that they end up as part of their formula for payment? Absolutely not. I think Bob Shore has been absolutely instrumental with getting out this tool so that we can actually prove that, which we've all known for a long period of time, which is there's no transparency in these decisions. At least tell us how to do this. What are you actually using? They think they have a better set of rules, and it's frightening. I'm just very disappointed after 13 years plus that we're still talking about this. I am impressed with what's happened in Delaware, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and I think across the country. I do want to share that the Delaware case that stimulated all this, thanks through the Delaware chapter. Where is the Delaware chapter? I just want to give kudos to Delaware. They implemented a program where every cardiologist in the state going through Blue Cross Blue Shield implemented the FOCUS campaign, and a paper describing these results has actually just been finished and will be submitted for publication this week. It really shines a light on what's going on and how beneficial our approach through the ACC has been. And I want to thank the college and everything for really getting to the real issue which impacts our patients, so thank you.
Thanks, Bob, and I just wanted to shout out to Bob, who's been chair of AUSSIE and was instrumental on our work group as well. So thank you. For the sake of time, I'm told we can't take any questions now, but we will step outside and be available for questions so that we can continue. Yes, Thad? So we'll be available outside in the lobby there to handle whatever questions. So thank you very much, and for my part, please do your part and participate in the PAR tour. Thank you very much.
So please don't leave.